here we go with the pump drill. So this is Primal Basic number, what is it? Primal Basic number 4. And so the next one is toggle drill, and then we're going to get into fire plow, fire saw, fire thong, and then all the other ones that we're going to come up with. So as we film this, it's coming on winter, and it's been nothing but gloomy and rainy and overcast. In fact, it's raining now, and one of the only things you want to do is just stay warm and dry and sit next to a fire. So this is one of those days where I'm kind of glad to be out here and got the wood stove going and doing my thing. My son's out here doing his homework. And so we're going to do some pump drill. So to start off with, since this is the Promethei section, is we're going to do a quick review of the Core 4 that we talked about earlier. And the reason for that is I'm reminded by my friend Josh Sager, who, by the way, him and his friend Mark Gallagher, together they make Din Within, who created the music that's used in this video. They have really great songs, and I use their instrumental music in this, but they got some good lyrics in it. But besides that, Josh has also been a big fan of wilderness and primitive skills. And he just posed to me the other question, a question a couple days ago, regarding how you do, is it possible or can you do friction fire keeping with one hand? Like you hurt your arm, or you hurt your hand, you hurt your shoulder, and you can't do a bow drill, you can't do a hand drill, you can't do mouth drill. So the thing about pump drill, one of the things that it's famous for is that you can use it with one hand, because it's a really easy device to use. It's a really easy method to do once you have all the devices balanced. So back to our Core 4, how I came to discover these Core 4 of the Dowel is worked my way backwards. And so starting from Core 4, there seems to be some kind of life need. Like, I had horrible asthma as a child, almost died a couple times. A lot of folks died in my family, and so I had a lot of questions about life and living and life and death, basically. And as I did my searching, I came across that I wanted to find the best things about humanity, and a lot of those things dealt on the basis of life and death. And after a lot of training and research and studying, a big thing for me was finding the 4 balancers. The profiler, also known as the scout, the provider, also known as the hunter-gatherer, the protector, also known as the warrior, and the healer, also known as the preserver, also known as the healer. And I think that these duty roles help make humanity really great. It's the best parts of humanity. And so looking at what they are, what's important is what they try to do. And what they do is the profiler gathers information and problem solves. The provider sustains and maintains everyday life. The warrior protects and defends life. And the preserver saves lives from disease and trauma. So then you have to figure out, well, what makes them so life-supporting? Well, you look at what it is that they're putting into balance. So what are the imbalances? You have to take a really good look at that. Well, the profiler balances us away from the imbalance of ignorance and not knowing, because that is definitely can lead to suffering and death. The provider takes us away from poverty, and not just money poverty, but just a lack of having the things that support, maintain, and sustain life. The warrior defends us from conflict, malice, violence, and the healer defends us from disease and trauma. So, but how do they go about solving those problems? Well, that's done through at least in the Dowel, through Dr. Humphrey's equation method, which is what we're always going through here. So we do it through the science version of right to left, where we go from structure to function, going over the pieces to understand how they work. And then we play around with it. We reverse that equation, and we go from function to structure, where we know how things work. So let's see, with playing with the variables that are between structure and function, if we can't just see what we can pull off. And before that, why do we even need to do these things? Well, because according to Dr. Humphrey's discovery and teaching, the value of life is probably our most significant value, the most universal, the most primary. In fact, it's, in my words, probably the standard by which all things of humanity should be measured. And then every value after that is a relative secondary value. So then we get to, and that's core number 2. So the equation is core number 3. The dual life value, Dr. Humphrey, is core number 2. And then the first core value is the natural law theory of equilibrium. And that's based on their thinking that there are 3 natures. The first main nature is the universe, the totality of the universe, which the majority of has absolutely nothing to do with humans, human life, and planet Earth. Okay. So, but then we have Mother Nature, which is a very specific, very unique, at least to us, situation where we're in a Goldilocks zone of the solar system, near the sun, our planet Earth, and there is life, a very unique and special thing, at least for us humans. And then we get to the third nature, which is human nature, which is really us as humans and our relationship to everything that's living on this planet and the planet itself, because it supports life. But the natural law theory of single natural law theory of equilibrium says that since the universe in its totality mostly has nothing to do with human life and planet Earth, that we are subject to its totality. So it doesn't care whether humans live or die. There is only equilibrium. So it's up to humans specifically to balance things out in favor of life. And that's what we're doing here when we're doing friction firekeeping. And any other skill, anything that's profiling, anything that's providing, anything that's protecting, and anything that's preserving of life. But here we're doing friction firekeeping. It's based on this Dowel. So back to the original question. So Josh asked me, what methods can you use one-handed? Well, the most famous one, again, is the pump drill, which we're going to go over in the next segment, which is Science to the Basic Form. And the only other one that's really famous that could be a one-handed method is the fire plow, which we'll do after toggle drill. And that's really done by the Samoan people. Now, I'm not a Samoan, so you're not going to see me do a one-handed fire plow. But it's been done. And then we'll see what other things that we could come up with that could be used with one hand. Much later. Okay, because if you think you're overwhelmed now with what I've been going over, we're not even close to being done. There's way more to go over. So with that, we're going to go into our next segment, Science of the Basic Form, and doing our equation, core number 3. We're going to go from right to left, look at the structures, the devices of how a pump drill is used, and understand how they work. Okay, understand its function by finding the variables and how they are balanced. Because it's only humans that need to balance things out in favor of life. Alright, let's keep going. Alright, so we're in Science of the Basic Form of the pump drill. So we're going to go over all the parts, the devices, the pieces that make up a pump drill. And unfortunately, too, we have to do a little bit of math and learn a few more definitions. So here's your basic pump drill. Okay. Now, the first place you always start with, because this is a drill axis method, is the core 2. So you have your spindle, okay? That one has a flywheel on it. So you start with your spindle. Here we're going to start with our 10 millimeter, and I haven't talked about this in a while, 10 millimeter bamboo chopstick. Okay? So we'll start with that. This will be our spindle. Our base is going to be here a section of cedar, or I might use a bamboo spatula handle also as well, you might see. So this will be our basic core 2. Alright. Now, after that, we need the new device is going to be what's called a flywheel. And a flywheel is necessary because what it does is it offers and creates what's called centrifugal force. Centrifugal force. So what that means is as this spins, okay, well actually let's start with a plain spindle. if I grip this spindle and I spin it, okay, it immediately stops because of the friction in my hand. See, it doesn't go anywhere after that. Okay. Now, centrifugal force, what you have here is mass that is outside the axis of the drill, and that mass, when it starts spinning, okay, allows the axis to keep spinning because the mass in orbit around it is still moving and has momentum. This is centrifugal force. So when I go to spin the spindle, it keeps spinning. It keeps spinning because of that mass, the mass that's around the spindle. Okay, that's centrifugal force. So what we do is we take that energy that's still going, and what that allows is for the method to be able to rewind itself. Okay. Now here is a new device as well. This is called a pressure bar brace, as I call it. Other people call it by different things. Handlebar, pressure bar. To me, it's a pressure bar brace. Okay. And your pressure bar brace has a hole in the center, which allows the spindle to go through. So that goes through there. The handle should not go all the way down to the flywheel, but we'll get to that soon. Okay. There's a cord that is, if you were using a bow drill, at least like my moderated Egyptian drill method, this would be just about, but not exactly, 1.5 times the length of this pressure bar brace. Okay, but we'll get to that measurement in a second. So the pressure bar brace has a hole in it. The spindle goes through there, and it's not a tight-fitting hole. It's one that allows for it to spin. Okay. Now, somewhere on top of the spindle is a knock. Okay, that's carved out to receive the cord. As you can see, the pressure bar brace does not go all the way to the flywheel, but we'll get to that. Now, what happens here is this is wound up, much like the, as a kid, you may have played with a rubber band airplane, and you wind up the propeller, and then you let it go. Well, this is kind of close to that. Here you wind up the spindle to get it started. Okay. Now the pressure bar brace, when you push it down, okay, sets the flywheel and the centrifugal force in motion. That centrifugal force then, after the cord has extended all the way it possibly can, the centrifugal rewinds, resets the cord to the spindle until it can't go anywhere anymore because it's stopped by the pressure bar brace. It can't go anywhere. So now that it's reset and it's tightened all the way, it creates for a split second that rubber band airplane propeller kind of stored energy force, and it quickly goes back for a second. Okay, it's tightened all the way and it goes back on its own for a second. Now at that moment, that split second that it releases back the other way, you push it back down. Okay, now to demonstrate quickly, support that base. Okay, we're going to wind that up, get it started. Now, again, as the bar goes down, it sets the centrifugal force in motion of the flywheel. That rewinds it all the way up here on the spindle, the cord. Now for a split second, when it gets to the top, it stores energy because it can't go anywhere and starts to go back. See that? It goes back on its own. At that second, you go down again so that it'll reset again. Okay? And then you just keep going. And that's centrifugal force as it keeps rewinding the cord on the spindle over and over again. Okay? Now, one of the main tricks you have to do is to balance the mass of the centrifugal force, because if you don't, here's what happens. Okay? It'll stop. It'll stop dead in its tracks. And it won't rewind. It'll probably bind in here, and you won't have enough mass to get it to keep turning. Or you're going to hold this down too long. Okay? You have to let the bar ride up again in a controlled fashion. Okay. Keep a little bit of pressure on the bar as it resets. I mean, don't let it fly all the way up. But if you keep too much pressure on this bar, you stop the centrifugal force yourself. Okay? And this is how we get our back and forth variable. Okay? The back and forth is created by the constant rewinding, resetting of this cord around the spindle from the centrifugal force. All right? Now, how this one was made is we have the bamboo chopstick. Okay? The flywheel is a section of soapstone which was carved, sanded, oiled to make it look the way it does right now. Okay? Now, one of the things that you definitely want on your pump drill is a reload. This one happens to be a scarf cut, which is held in place with 2 hose clamps. All right. And the reload is also a piece of bamboo chopstick. All right, what a surprise. Now, one of the tricks, the key things you really have to do too, is to make sure the flywheel is attached to the spindle. The flywheel cannot spin freely on its own. It must be attached to the spindle so that when its mass goes around, it's connected to the spindle and it spins the spindle. Okay? The flywheel can't be free turning on its own. Alright. This pressure bar brace is just a half section of some bamboo that I just happen to have. Alright. And we have our regular store-bought cord here. And of course you could use a natural cord, which we've gone over in the past. Alright. Now there's a mathematical equation, okay, for, well, I didn't put it on, for getting this, these 2 triangles set up to be the most efficient. The most efficient triangles you're going to get on a pump drill goes by a mathematical rule called 3-4-5, or the Pythagorean triangles. Okay. So here the pressure bar, okay, at least on this triangle here, this triangle on my right, your left. Okay. If this pressure bar brace here is a 3, okay? The spindle is a 4, and the cord is a 5. Now this is something that carpenters or contractors use to make sure that they have a square angle. Like when they're measuring out a room, the room has to be at right angles. It has to be square or things are not going to fit. So how they measure a corner of a room or something like that, or like when they're framing, they use this quick measurement to see if they have a right angle and make sure that everything is square. So they'll get a measurement. They could start off with, for example, 3 feet. This would be the 3. The spindle is a 4. Now, if this line here that joins the 3 and the 4, if that ends up being a 5, then this is a right angle. All right? Same thing on this side. Here, this is a 3, this will be a 4, and this will be a 5. Now, you could substitute any number. This could be a 6, this could be an 8, and this could be a 10. All right? And then you'll get yourself a right angle. But as it turns out, when you're doing this method and you're creating a pump drill, this is really the best measurement for determining the length of your pressure bar brace and your spindle and your cord. Okay? Now, is this one exactly 3, 4, 5? No, it's not. And a lot of them that I've made aren't. But when you're practicing your basics of creating a pump drill, this is the rule you want to follow. So with that, some information that you can find that's very helpful on pump drills is found in the Bulletin of Primitive Technology from the Primitive Technology Society, and they're past issues, by the way. I think in 1993 there was an article by some guys, Charles Worsham and my friend Anthony Filari. Now, Anthony Filari's article is a great one. He made one entirely primitively. Stone tools, all his materials he collected in nature, and he even made the tools so that he can make tools to make the pump drill, all primitively. So hats off to Anthony Filari for that article and passing down that information. Years ago, I saw that pump drill that you'll see in the article. It's an amazing work of art how he did it. And he did it using 2 rocks. The pump drill is famous for having a round flywheel. But what he did is he balanced the centrifugal force with a bar that goes across with rocks. It's a pretty amazing thing. So really check it out. There's a YouTube video of a guy doing a pump drill in his garage. He just decided to make a pump drill one day. And he just took a section of 2x4. Okay, this is obviously a piece of bamboo. But he took a piece of 2x4 and he made that his flywheel. And that worked really, really well. So I'll give you the address for that YouTube video if it stays on there. But because he did that, I'm not going to go over that. Look it up for yourself, because one of the things that you have to do is look things up, research things, gather your own information, and he already did that. I'll refer you to that information that's out there. So it would work something like this. So one day I was, when I was at the school I was working, I came across this broken section of someone trying to make a pump drill. And what this is a section of half a sapling of oak, okay? And here is, they tried to make this pump drill out of cedar, which the spindle is really too fragile for that. So again, the stability variable wasn't balanced. But here he or she made the spindle oval, And they put an oval hole inside the center of this half section sapling of oak. And they fit that on there. Okay, so that's wedged in there. That's not going anywhere. And as you can see, okay, it's connected to the spindle because of that, because of its shape and it being wedged in there. So when it spins, it takes the spindle with it. Well, what was missing when I found this was the other half of the sapling. So I went to the hardware store and got a large oak dowel, which I cut in half, put a hole in, and this fit in the slot that was missing. Now this slot fits the other part of the sapling that would have been in there, but I found it without the other half. So now we have centrifugal force caused by mass outside of the spindle, which allows it to keep spinning. Okay? And so instead of having just a bar, like this guy's 2x4 and Anthony Filari's double bar with the stones, if you look it up, I mean, and you really have to look it up. It's a really great article. Here we have a cross, which allows to do the same thing, which represents a wheel. Okay. Here we have a dowel spindle, okay, with a cylinder of wood, okay, which is, let's see, the cylinder is 3 inches tall, okay, this wood cylinder. Now, on my first visit to Japan, ever in 1997, I visited a department store called Tokyu Hands. Tokyu Hands is in, at least that one store, is in Shibuya section of Tokyo. And on one of the floors, because each floor has a different department, was an outdoor section. And I was so fascinated. I was wandering around, looking at all the inventions and all the technology that they use for outdoor stuff. And I saw what I thought was a pump drill in a bag, hanging in like a cellophane bag, hanging on the wall for sale. And I look over and it was a pump drill in a bag for sale in a Japanese department store. And this is actually it. This is what it was, minus these things that you see around the wood cylinder. And it came with its own what I call pressure bar brace. This is actually it, but it's been used so much that it broke. Here's the hole for the spindle that went around there. Okay. And there was another piece like this that was also the base. Okay. And it also came with a reload system. So it came with these little plugs, and those plugs are long gone, by the way. And you'd fit the plugs in there, and what I did also was I added a hose clamp on there to hold the reloads in. Now, it's very hard to see, but there's a tiny screw that goes completely through the bottom of this spindle. Now, the socket hole for the reloads, they had a small slot across where the reload fit in, and the reload would line up with the screw, and that would keep the reload from spinning because it would be butted up against the screw with the little knock in it, and it wouldn't spin. Okay, very ingenious. But here I just have a hose clamp that'll bear down on any plug that I put in there now. Now, as I was working with this pump drill, I came to realize that it did not have enough centrifugal force. So my dilemma was, what do I do? So I needed to add more mass to the outside of the cylinder. So I went to the hardware store and I bought a steel bar, and I cut up the steel bar into little pieces, and then I hose clamped those steel bar pieces to the cylinder. Okay. And that added a lot of mass. This thing's really heavy now. That added a lot of mass to the flywheel. So I'm going to tighten down this reload. I made this reload, it's willow, small willow branch. And I made a new pressure bar brace. And of course, because it's Japanese, made out of a section of bamboo, right? Put the hole in, put a cord on it. So again, the spindle goes through the hole in the pressure bar brace. We have our knock up top, which receives the cord. Okay. And the pressure bar brace just barely is just off the cylinder there. Now on this small section of cedar, it's already mated. I'm just going to kind of demonstrate here. Now there's a lot of mass on this flywheel for centrifugal force. You can see when it comes up, okay, it gets really tight. It has nowhere to go anymore. It stores energy for a second and goes back the other way. Now at that moment, you have to capture that release of the stored energy. And that's when you go back down. Okay? Go back down at that moment when it starts to go back. But you get a feel for it after a while. Okay? Let's see if we can get this to smoke. And it's starting to smoke. Now to make this more stable, you would use two hands on your pressure bar brace. But you could do it one hand, which I'll show you right now. And what you want is more clearance. This bar is really low to the flywheel. Almost. This bar is really low to the flywheel. So what you need is more room if you're going to do this one-handed, because there's no place for my fingers. In fact, your hand actually hits the flywheel, and that's not good. Okay, so you need space. The pressure bar brace should probably just go a couple inches above the flywheel for room. Okay. And is this exactly 3, 4, 5? No, it's not. Okay. Should it be? Yes. Okay. Let's see. So let's get started doing our first pump drill. Alright, so we're going to start with our basics. We're going to do our 10 millimeter chopstick. Okay? And here's what I'll recommend. You go to the hardware store and you get yourself a hard plastic wheel. This one's 4 inches. Okay, 4 inches. And it's used for like carts, things like that. Usually this is connected to a, I don't know how to put it, a section of metal that attaches to like a rolling table or something like that. And I took the axle out of there, the screw axle. Alright, took all that off. And so what we'll do with that is, and you have to make sure when you get these that you don't get something that has a ball bearing turning cylinder inside. Okay, this one has a ball bearing turning center, and that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for something that just has a hole. Okay, this doesn't turn inside. And whatever spindle it is that you're going to put in here has to come very close to the hole, and the spindle have to be very close in size to where they fit. Okay. Now, actually, this is a 4-inch and this is a 3-inch. And this 3-inch one, the hole seems to be a little bit more of a better fit. So we're going to use that one. So the first thing we're going to need to do is attach the flywheel to the spindle. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, in this case, we're going to use some very small nails. All right. Let me just get my camera. Now, when you insert these very tiny nails, okay, you insert them on the bottom side, okay? Don't insert it on the top, because gravity, okay, gravity will let the flywheel fall. We don't want that. We want to stop gravity from the flywheel coming off. So we're going to insert the nails on the bottom so that the flywheel doesn't go anywhere. It's got nowhere to go. Okay, so we flip this upside down, give this plenty of room, all right, and we're going to tap one nail inside on one side, and we're going to tap another nail on the other side. Okay, I have a screwdriver in here. I should probably use it. Nail driver. So this gets you started on your first puncture. Okay. Now we've successfully attached the flywheel to the spindle. Okay, so we're just getting started. Now the thing with the top of your chopstick, this is too thin to support a notch, so that's got to come off. So we're going to cut that off, and I'm going to put a knock in it right away. So I used my band saw to cut a couple inches off the top and put a knock in. Okay. And the next thing you're going to do is get a pressure bar, and what this is going to be is a strong, sturdy, stable section of wood. Okay, that's thicker, at least twice as thick as the spindle, and you're going to put a hole in the center. Okay, and it's important that it's exactly in the center, because otherwise your pressure bar brace won't be centered. Now your cord, and again what you're going to do is try to follow that 3, 4, 5 rule. Now this cord here is obviously too long, because I use this for the other one. So what we're going to do is we're going to shorten this one side. Okay, so I've shortened one side. Here we've successfully got our pump drill to at least get somewhere functional, okay, as you can see. Now what's important that you should do is measure out 3, 4, 5, all right, to get those measurements correct. I didn't do that here, but you're going to do that. So here's what you would do. Make sure you have 1 inch or 2 from the flywheel to the pressure bar brace. Okay? From there, what is this measurement? What is number 4? Okay? What is the 4 measurement? Once you have that, okay, cut out your pressure bar brace to the 3 ratio. Okay? After you've done that, you could string it. Now you could use as much string as you want and then cut it off. Alright, so the 5 is not going to be hard to determine. But your first measurement is going to be the 4. Then go to 3 and then just put the cord on. Okay? So and here it is one-handed. Alright, so that's the basics of the pump drill. Alright, going from right to left. So we have some new devices. We have the flywheel. Okay, we have a pressure bar brace. We have a cord that goes what looks like from the moderated cording method, a cord that's about 1.5 times the length of the bow, but this is not a bow, this is a pressure bar brace, okay, but you'll measure that later. We're interested in centrifugal force from the mass that is connected to a spindle. Okay, it must be firmly connected to the spindle. Alright. What else? You're going to have enough space on the bottom of your spindle, okay, for the core 2 to attach a reload like this one. Okay, like this one of Willow. So, and with that, I'm going to do a quick demonstration of getting a pump drill to work, so you see that how it's done, and we're going to go right into art of the variation. All right, let's keep going. Alright, so let's get you started on your first pump drill. Now I want you to have not only a success your first time out doing this, but what's more important is that you start to understand how to balance the variables. Okay, that's more important. And with your fails that you'll get, you're going to learn more and more. So look forward to them, actually, when you don't get a call each and every time. Otherwise, you're not going to get better. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do for us to get started is you're going to go to the hardware store. All right. Because I'm always going to expect that you can't, or I'm not going to say inconvenient, but some people just can't acquire materials from nature. Either they're not near it, or it's the wrong time of year, or it's just not available. It's just not in their environment. Or you just don't know what to look for. So we're going to go to the hardware store and we're going to pick up a couple items, okay? You're going to need a pencil for drawing out measurements. You're going to need a regular pine lumber 2x4, okay? And it should not be treated, so it should not have any chemicals in it. And kiln dried, meaning that all the moisture is cooked out of it, might be more ideal if you could find one of those. And you don't have to buy a high-end expensive one, but when you go to the hardware store and you go to pick out your pine stud, you should sight down it and make sure that it's not crooked or has a airplane propeller curve in it. All right, it's not all twisted. The grain is fairly straight, as you can see on this one. The grain is nice and straight. Okay, it's free of knots mostly. You'd be lucky if you found a pine stud that didn't have any knots in it. But the grain should be straight, the stud should be straight, and should be pretty much free of knots, and should be fairly dry. Okay. So you need one of those. Usually get an 8-foot one. You don't need a 10-foot one or a 12-foot one or anything like that, unless you're stocking up. What else? Get yourself a 1-inch diameter broomstick, just your regular standard broomstick, and it should be of some kind of hardwood. You don't have to know what the hardwood is, but it should not be fragile. Okay, a regular 1-inch broomstick. All right, this one's already cut down, but that's what you need. You need a 1/2-inch drill bit. I would recommend you get the one that has the hole centering recessed tip. Okay, for drilling, and this is obviously a wood drill bit. You'll need some tape. Here I have some black electric tape, because you're going to be marking off the depth of the drill bit to 1/2 inch. You're going to need a piece of tape. All right. You're going to need 1-inch hose clamps. So get a package of those, or a handful of those. Okay. You're going to need a screwdriver for the hose clamps. You're going to need cord of some sort. Okay. We went over all the sizes that you probably need. Just regular store-bought cord or clothesline. Nothing too thick. Okay. What else? And if you could find them in your hardware store, you're going to look for what are called dowel pins. Right. These are the 1/2-inch dowel pins. You can get any brand. Now, the thing about these is you have no idea what the wood is. They don't tell you. All right. And they come in different sizes too. These are 3/8 inch, and these are 1/2 inch. They look like this. They're called fluted dowel pins, and they have ridges up and down the sides. All right. These are going to be reloads. just so you know. Now in this one box, and it costs like $3, there's 20 of the 1/2 inch. If you get, you don't have, don't get the 3/8 inch unless you really want to, but they have 35 in this box. Just so you have an idea, these are 1/2 inch in diameter like it says, but they are 1.5 inches long in length. Alright, so these will be our reloads. You're going to need some like pin nails. And these are like nails that you use to hang a picture, small pictures. So these little small ones that I have here, the measurement on this is 1.6 millimeters by 32 millimeters. Okay, little pin nail. So get a box of those. They are about 1.25 inches in length. 1.25 inches in length. Alright, just some pin nails. And you're going to need a 1-inch drill bit as well, because we're going to drill through our pine stud. Now what I would recommend getting, if you can, are the hole cutting drill bits that drill a cylinder straight down into the wood. Okay, and this one is 1 inch here, and we'll do that. So, as soon as you get everything together, we'll come back and we'll throw together your first pump drill. All right. Now you may need some other things. Hopefully you have like a table saw, band saw, sandpaper, obviously, maybe a belt sander. Now these things aren't necessary, but they're definitely going to help you out a little bit. All right. So get those things together, and we're going to come back and throw this together.